Once, in far-off rocky Iceland, its problem became beset the churches. For Iceland, as you know, is made of rock and stone. And they ran out of room in the boneyards to bury their dead. So a great synod was held, and the Icelandic church decided that the bones from pre-Christian times could be carried away and burned. And so it was. 4 men went down to a churchyard. There was Sven in charge. There was his second in command, who was called Brynolf. There was the youngest, little Olaf, to do all the work. And then there was Dark Grim, who claimed to be a descendant of the great Skallagrimsson himself. Well, the men were digging and digging, or at least Olaf was, all morning, when all of a sudden Olaf said, "Oh, I found something here. I think it must be a root." "Well, dig it up," said Sven. "Dig it up." And Olaf carried on digging, and as he dug, he looked at the bone more and more, the root more and more, and he suddenly said, "It's not a root, it's a bone, a long bone." And Sven said, "Grim, help him." And the pair of them jumped into and now worked away at the great bone. And it was indeed a long bone, a thigh bone. Heavy, strong. It took all 4 men to wrestle it out of the hole. And at last, as the sun reached noon, it lay there, outside the pit. And then Olaf picked up that bone, as one fascinated by it. He picked it up and he threw it in the air and he caught it. And Grim said, "What are you doing with that bone? For that bone must surely belong to my great ancestor, Egil Skallagrimsson, he who was mighty in sorcery, in the powers of death and life. You leave it be." And Olaf, who had always loved the stories of Egil, picked up the bone and threw it in the air and caught it, and picked it up and threw it in the air and caught it, and he said, "Well, when this man was alive, such a cliff troll he was, he held the world in his hands. But now I hold him and I throw him up and I catch him. You know what I want?" "What?" said Grim. "I would love Egil to come to my wedding. We'd have a few bouts together and I would show him the power of living now." And he threw the bone up and it went down and it caught Sven, ow, on the head. And he told him to put it in the pit with the others to be burnt later. Now when Olaf said that, he was little more than a lad. He had never had a girlfriend, let alone be engaged to be married. But the years passed, with the flowing of the river and the falling of the leaves. Olaf grew up. He became at last engaged to Gudrun. Now Gudrun was a good woman, who didn't belong to that valley or the next one, but the one after, where people in that valley had a reputation for being wise in more than just one way. And so it was, her people had wondered whether they would ever marry Gudrun off, and were delighted when Olaf agreed. It was after the engagement was announced in a great party. Olaf rode over the hills and over the hills again. And he came back to his own homestead, which he was making beautiful for Gudrun. But that night he had a dream. And in that dream, a great dark figure, a cliff troll of a man, all bushy eyebrowed, somehow so tall he overhung the room that Olaf thought he was in, came to him. And Olaf saw, beyond the door, there was a great dry plain, streaked with red lightning. And the figure stooped to the door and said, "Olaf, Olaf, Olaf, I must say, I am so looking forward to your wedding. I shall come, and as invited, have a few bouts with you there, and then. And then there was a great bolt of black lightning, and the figure disappeared. Now when he had the dream the first time, he just thought, well, it's just pre-nuptial nerves. But when he'd had it for a week, he grew desperate. And when he had it for a fortnight, he could bear it no longer. He rode over the hills and over the hills again, until at last he came to the valley of Gudrun, and she said, Olaf, I didn't expect you. What a delight. And Olaf looked pleased for a while, but as the night drew on, he looked more and more hunted, and Gudrun said, what is it that has brought you here? And Olaf told her of his dream, and he said, is it just a dream? It's not going to really happen, is it? And Gudrun looked at him and said, I would have thought nothing of your dream, but last night and the night before, I had almost the same dream. I was in a dark room, with a door that opened on a great plain, and the same dark figure stalks towards me across the land of the dead, and said, Gudrun, Gudrun, I am so looking forward to being at your wedding. So Olaf, I ask you, have you invited anyone to this wedding you shouldn't have? Well, just your relatives. No, anyone you really shouldn't. Anyone! Or perhaps anything. And all of a sudden, Olaf remembered back the years to the churchyard and the long bone of Egil Skallagrimsson. And he told Gudrun all about it in a turgid stream. And when she heard it, she looked really grim and said, Oh, Olaf, how could you be so stupid? Egil's power transcends death. It is likely he will come. We must be prepared. Can't we cancel the invite? No. But don't worry. I know what to do. And she sent him home with instructions that he should wait upon her word and get as much money from his relatives as he could. And then she rode right to the very northern crag of Iceland, where dwelt in those days, and who knows, perhaps in these, the greatest crone of her people. And what service she did the crone, or what payment she made her, no story says. But Gudrun left with gifts, a curious lock, a bag of silver, a goblet filled with black earth, and much good advice. And when she came to Olaf's farm, she said, I know what we must do. We must build a second hall here, and we must lay it out with all the finest decorations from ancient pagan times. And when Egil Skallagrimsson comes to our wedding, you must invent a reason, take him across the courtyard, and lock him in this hall with this lock. And in this hall I shall set this goblet of black earth for him to feast on, that he may celebrate our wedding night. But how will I get him across? Oh, Olaf, I can't do everything. You'll have to use what wit and wisdom you have. Oh, my giddy aunt. And Olaf started to dread the days to his wedding, as they built a second hall, dry and bare, and in it they put all the trophies from Egil's days, all the helmets and the old silks, the relics of Byzantium. And on their wedding day, all the guests noted Olaf and Gudrun seemed to be a little cautious. They smiled enough in their wedding, and everybody knew they were in love. But when it came to the feast, both of them became more and more jumpy. Time wore on, and it was quite 8 o'clock when suddenly there was a sound like distant lightning, and then a drum beat. But the drum beat turned into a regular beat, 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 such as giant feet would make. And they heard the door of the compound of Olaf blow in. And suddenly the hall door seemed almost wrenched off its hinges by a great cold blast. And before them there stood a huge cliff troll of a man, skin white, shining like moonlight, eyes dark as fear itself. And he said, "I have come, Olaf, as you invited, so that we may have a few bouts together on this your wedding night. Go on, Sir Gudrun, do it." And Olaf came across and he said, "Well, before we do that, you are our guest and must eat with us. Where shall I sit?" No, you know the customs of these lands. It's not fitting for the dead to sit with the living. We have made you a hall quite of your own. Show me. Well, I better lead on. Oh no, I cannot lead you. We must go arm in arm, as if we were friends, according to the custom of these lands. And so little Olaf put his arm inside great Egil, and the ghost and the man walked across the yard to where the new hall was. And then Egil turned with a nasty smile, as someone who knew the custom of the land would give Olaf into his power. And then he said, Olaf, I know as well as you the custom of this land. You must go into the hall and light the lamp and invite the guest inside." But Olaf looked at him and said, "It is true. At any other time, as you are the guest, I must invite you into my hall, but this is my marriage night. Alone, according to the custom of the lands, you go into the hall and invite me in, the groom." And Egil, who knew the custom, went inside the hall. And then he turned with an even nastier look and he said, "Well, I now know the custom of these lands. As I am the guest and you're the host, you must come in and drink my health." And Olaf replied, "That is the custom of these lands, but on a wedding night, a groom may not leave his bride." And so saying, he closed the great doors and clicked the lock that had been put on them tight shut. And then he walked back as slow as he could to his own hall and nodded to Gudrun. Well, soon after, the party broke up. And the next day, Olaf got up quite early, given it was the night after his wedding night. And he said, "Should we go look at the hall?" And Gudrun said, "No, we cannot look until the noonday sun." And Olaf kept finding himself going towards the hall, and he had to force himself back. In the end, I'm afraid Gudrun tied him down to a chair, waiting till noon. And at noon she said, "Now we'll go together." And holding his hand, she went through to the hall, opened the lock. And Olaf made to go in the hall, and she said, "No, look!" And she pointed to the ground. And on the ground was a hideous rune, the Hagar rune. If you had touched that rune, you would have been caught, and Egil would have had your soul in the end. Let me go in alone. And so saying, she jumped over the rune, and as she did it, she clicked the bag of Byzantine silver. And Olaf closed the door and left her in the dark. And the bag of silver was never seen again, but Gudrun came out again after half an hour or more and said, "Don't worry, he will never bother us again. Let us take the hall down." And so they took down the mighty hall of Egil Skallagrimsson, and he never returned to the living lands. And Gudrun and her Olaf, I'm happy to say, they were as happy as you can be in this odd old fallen world of ours.